remember much of the service except for how heavy the sky felt. It was one of those windless days where the heat sat on your shoulders like an extra punishment. I stood there in my black dress, hands clenched around the worn edges of a tissue, and listened to the pastor say words I wasn't ready to hear. Faithful husband, loving father, devoted man. My fingers dug into the fabric as I tried to stay upright. The church smelled like lilies and dust, like grief that had settled too deep into the wood to ever leave. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. My husband had passed away quietly in his sleep 3 days prior. A heart attack, they said. No struggle, no goodbye, just a silence that would never end. We had been married 48 years, and while he was never loud or showy, his absence was thunderous. My body felt like it had been scooped hollow. My name didn't feel like it belonged to anyone anymore. People said kind things, as they always do when someone dies. Neighbors I hadn't seen in years came to pat my arm and murmur meaningless words. "He was such a good man," or "You were so lucky." I nodded, smiled politely. Not because I agreed, but because I was too numb to do anything else. My grief wasn't loud, it didn't scream or throw itself on the casket. It was a quiet ache behind my ribs, steady and constant. I had barely spoken since the morning I found him, still and cold. I had made the arrangements alone. My daughter, Claire, only called once. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask what I needed. She only asked when the will would be read. She arrived at the funeral with perfect timing. 30 minutes late, sunglasses too large for her face, designer black dress too tight for the occasion. Her hair was styled, her nails were done. Her husband trailed behind her, bored and scrolling his phone like the whole event was an inconvenience. She didn't come to hug me. She didn't come to say sorry. She didn't even look at the casket. She found her seat and sat like she was attending a dry business seminar she couldn't wait to leave. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the words being spoken at the altar. But then it happened. As the pastor invited everyone to stand for the final prayer, Claire leaned over to her husband and said it, quietly, but not quietly enough. "Finally," she whispered with a smirk. "One less mouth to feed." My knees buckled. I gripped the pew so tightly I thought the wood might splinter. My ears rang. My heart stuttered, not from sadness, but from something darker, colder. She hadn't said it like a joke. She said it like a relief, like his death was a financial break, not a human loss. I stared straight ahead, forcing my eyes not to turn toward her, not to react. The prayer ended and people moved around me, hugging, offering condolences. I just stood there, frozen in place, the words circling in my head like a curse. One less mouth to feed. That was my husband, the man who raised her, the man who worked until his bones ached, who went without so she could have. He loved her deeply, even when she pushed him away, even when she disappeared for years, only showing up when she needed something. I remembered him holding her as a baby, singing lullabies off-key. I remembered him sneaking into the kitchen to make her midnight snacks when she had nightmares. And now she saw him as a burden erased. She never saw him as a father, just as a wallet. And if that was how she saw him, then I knew exactly how she saw me. Later that night, I sat alone in the kitchen. My black dress was wrinkled, my hair undone, but I didn't care. I stared at the last envelope we'd prepared together, the will. We had signed it a year before, right after his first health scare. At the time, I had fought to include Claire in everything. I had argued that she was still our daughter, that maybe she would change. But I saw it now, clearer than ever. Claire didn't need a mother, she needed a bank. And I was about to close the vault, forever. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan ticking overhead like a slow-ticking clock. I used to imagine that if I died first, my husband would be the one to hold everything together, the house, the finances, the last thread of family we had left. But now it was just me. And Claire? Claire made it painfully clear she didn't see me as a mother anymore. She saw me as an obstacle. By morning, the ache in my chest had cooled into something sharp. I walked to the small cabinet by the dining room wall, the one that held all our papers, and pulled out the file. Everything was still there. The original will, the account numbers, the copy of the deed to the house that my husband and I paid off slowly, steadily, over 30 years. All of it. And her name. Her name was still on it. I stood there for a long time, staring at the paper, remembering the fight my husband and I had the night we decided to leave her in. He had been hesitant. She'll just sell everything, spend it on her lifestyle, he had warned, but I had defended her, like mothers do. She's our only child, I had said. We can't leave her with nothing. Now I knew he had been right all along, and I had handed her the knife. The lawyer's office was quiet when I walked in that afternoon. A small bell jingled above the door. The receptionist gave me a warm smile, not realizing I was there to erase my daughter from the life she was so eager to benefit from. I sat down across from the same attorney who had helped draft the original will. He looked surprised to see me so soon after the funeral, but he didn't question it. Not when I slid the folder across the desk and said clearly and calmly, "I want to change everything." He opened the file, scanning quickly. "Removing your daughter?" he asked gently, as if testing the words. I nodded. "Completely. No house, no funds, not even the car. She gets nothing, not even the photo albums." He looked at me for a moment and then began to write. "We drafted a new will that day. I left everything to two people, my niece Melissa, who had visited and helped around the house every week without ever asking for a thing, and my husband's childhood friend's daughter, a quiet young woman who helped drive us to the hospital when his legs gave out. She never asked for money. She just showed up when we needed kindness. I gave them everything. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, out of clarity, out of truth. Claire had buried her father and smirked at the savings. Now she would find herself buried beneath the weight of her own words. 2 weeks passed in silence. Then she called. Not to ask how I was. Not to apologize. Just business. "Hey, Mom," she said, too cheery. "I talked to the lawyer and he said he hadn't received a final copy of the will yet. I figured you'd want to move that along?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring out the window at the garden my husband used to tend every morning. His roses were blooming without him, but they were still blooming. "Funny," I said flatly. "I was just about to call him. There's been a change." "Oh?" she said, cautious now. "Yes," I said, my voice like a sharpened spoon. "A very big one." She paused, her tone shifting. "Wait, what kind of change?" "You'll find out when the papers arrive," I replied. "But I'll tell you this much, Claire. You won't need to worry about feeding anyone anymore, because there's nothing coming for you to chew on." Dead silence, then a scoff. "You're seriously doing this over a joke?" I laughed quietly. "No, Claire, you already did it. I'm just finally listening." She hung up. Gary, my neighbor, who had helped carry my husband's coffin, came by later that evening with groceries. I didn't tell him what I'd done, but I think he could tell something had shifted in the air. I felt lighter, firmer, like a tree that had been growing bent, finally snapped upright. The letter reached her on a Monday. I knew because the lawyer sent me a courtesy copy of the delivery confirmation. She signed for it herself, her name scrawled in that impatient, scribbled way she'd always written when she didn't care what anyone thought. I waited, not because I needed a reaction, but because I wanted her to sit with it, to let the silence fester, to realize the world didn't bend when she snapped her fingers. The call came 3 days later. "Blocked number," I answered anyway. "You're sick," she hissed. No greeting, no apology, just venom. "How could you do this to me? To your own daughter?" I stayed silent, just listened. "Dad would have never wanted this." I almost laughed. Almost. "You mean the dad you said was one less mouth to feed at his funeral?" She went quiet, just breathing then. "You misunderstood. That was what you really think," I finished. "And that's exactly why you'll never see a dime." She started crying. Real or fake, I couldn't tell. I didn't care. The sound didn't move me anymore. "Do you understand what you've done?" she choked. "You've ruined my future." "No, Claire," I said gently. "I just gave you the one you earned." Then I hung up. I blocked her number. I told the lawyer not to forward any emails or letters from her. I took her out of every policy, every document, every plan. When I die, there won't even be a memory of her in my paperwork. And I've started something else, too. A small scholarship in my husband's name for students who take care of their aging parents without expecting anything in return. As for the house, I sold it. The one Claire assumed she'd inherit and flip for a quick payout? Gone. And before I left, I taped something to the back of the bedroom door. A copy of the new will, and a photograph of her father. The same photo she refused to display at the funeral. On the back of it, I wrote one sentence. You fed off us like wolves, now let the silence feed you back. I moved into a small cottage near the lake. Quiet, peaceful. My husband's roses, replanted in pots, bloom there now. And I sit in my chair each morning, tea in hand, with the sun on my face. Knowing that for once, she's the one looking in from the outside with nothing. Not a cent. Not a name in the will. Not a mother anymore. Just the echo of her own cruelty, starving in the silence she created. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.